Okay, how you guys doing, man? I thought I'd whip a video up. I've had fun doing the last few, so thought I'd do another one. This one, I think the last one, the last one I did for Onix Rift was the enemy event, kind of how the enemy events are handled and how the hit detection's handled in Onix Rift. And then I made a video. It was kind of like a let's play, but a kind of more when I first released Onix Rift. I was surprised. Dragonheart Man, he made a video just like first time he played it, and he just sent it to me in my game page thread, and it helped out a lot. I really appreciated it, and yeah, just seeing somebody new play through your game that hasn't test played it 1,000 times, it's really helpful to see what you need to do to guide the player along, what mechanics they're having trouble with, stuff like that. So the last video I actually made was I did like a Starless Umbra kind of a playthrough, and I was just talking through it, giving them first reaction to things. Hopefully that helped them out with something in the development of Starless Umbra. Pretty cool little game. But today, in this video, I thought it might be cool to I'm going to talk about, because I had mentioned before, I did the first video that I made, and it was about the camera pan that I had added, I guess, dynamic screen pan or dynamic camera. And also I was showing you guys the hero's running animation that I'd added into the game, and how I really liked just how it made the game feel. It just felt a little better playing because it's tile movement, and just your guy moves so quick. The running, he's always running, and it felt a lot better. Well, obviously, I'm sure watching me play it, you noticed it's not one character set that cycles between the three, both feet on the ground, right foot, right step, left step. It's actually a 6-frame animation. And I thought I'd just do a little quick pinner video about what I did in the common events to achieve that. So that way it's kind of a cool little check it out. This is how I did it in Onix Rift. But if people actually watched it, it's really pretty simple. And if I've said it before, you guys are all pretty sharp. I'm sure you know how to event it. But if you didn't, or if you're just looking for, at least to see how I did it, give you some ideas on how you can do it in your own game, because it just makes it, once you do it and you see it in your game, it just looks so much better than the 3-frame animation, the default 3-frame animation walk that on 2K3. So jumping right in here, we know how I kind of talked about on the last video. We talked about your character swinging a sword. Certain switches come on, certain switches go off. When you hit that button press, a switch comes on. It's in here. I don't know what number it is. It's in my game. The switch, I named it sword swing pose, or I think that's what it is, sword swing pose. And when that switch comes on, that would just be any attack. So any weapon you have equipped, the sword swing pose is the switch used to tell the common event database that your guy's attacking. Well, attack animations are handled with pictures. So obviously we need to get that character set that's representing the player to disappear, and then have the picture immediately, the picture frames animate his swing. So within that hero running animation that I did, the 6-frame running animation, what I did was heroes pose handler current. There it is, common event 68. Okay, so again, like I said, it's a parallel process, and when a switch that's called hero pose, that's not the sword, hero sword pose is a different switch. This is just the hero pose animation. This is responsible for his character set showing when he's walking or running or whatever he's doing. When that switch is on, which every map, it's one of those switches that gets refreshed every map. Because during certain cutscenes, if I want him to not be running, to be walking animation, or if I need to make his character set disappear, I have to have that switch off. Otherwise, this common event, this parallel process common event, will always if I were to change my character, my character set on my hero during like a cinematic scene, this common event would interfere with that because it would just constantly try to make him stand. According to this, if the player's standing there not pressing any buttons, he should just be standing there resting. I think between 2 frames of him in his resting animation. So you have to be able to turn this off also. So it's handled as a parallel process with just a switch that turns on to allow that to happen. And it's handled like we discussed in the last video. Label 5, like we have a bunch of labels that we're going to jump to depending on what's happening on screen, whether you're swinging your sword, whether you're there's been a key press and he's walking around. Now, when I built this, I think I initially started, kind of like you build any in-depth parallel process that's going to be moving, is like the best way to handle it is to do it in sections. So again, you're going to see my labels. The labels aren't in order. So our first label we see here is label 5. That doesn't matter. They can be in any order so long as they're jumping to the correct label when they need to be. So the first thing that happens here, label 5, is the first thing we're always going to check. Label 5 is your typical, you press, you're running, you're moving, or you're just standing there. It's going to jump to label 5, and it's going to run through that. Whether keys are being pressed, it'll run through the 6-frame running animation. If there's no keys being pressed, if that value is 0, the variable that's tied to the key press is 0, no keys are being pressed, and so that's going to play his resting frame animation. But the first thing we're always checking is whether sword swing pose is on. Because if sword swing pose is on, our character set needs to be blank. So that's the first thing that label 5 is always going to run through. So let's go down. So this is just checking our key presses. Let's go down to, here we go, label 3. Now this label would be jump to label 3 right here. If vertical keys are greater than 0, jump to label 3. If horizontal keys are greater than 0, jump to label 3. So whether you're any button directional keys you're pushing, we're going to jump to label 3. So that's going to handle his character set change as he walks. So this is pretty simple. We know I have a custom menu system. So the switch for that would be menu live. And it just checks to make sure the menu's off, because we don't want to be in our menu and then press a directional key to navigate our menu and have our guy look like he's running in the background. So if menu live is off, that's when it's going to show these moving animations. So for any of this to happen, menu live has to be off. Now, once menu, as long as the menu isn't active, the first thing we're checking within that label 3 is the sword swing pose. So if you happen to be moving, or right as you started moving and it jumps to label 3 to show the animation, before it actually shows it, it's going to check to make sure that our sword swing pose isn't on. Because if it is, we're going to see the picture animations, the picture frame animations of him swinging his sword while his character set is running across the screen or in place, and it's going to look incorrect, obviously. So if that sword swing pose happens to be on, even though if we just jump to label 3, it will go back to label 5 and make sure that our character set is an empty slate. Make sure that he's not there. He's transparent, not transparent, but you know what I mean. His character set's empty. So that would be the first check. Other than the menu switch, none of this happens if the menu's on. So the sword swing pose is on. It'll jump to label 5. All right. So getting into, all right. Pretend like, all right. Let's just say we're jumping to label 3, and there's no menu system, and there's no swords attack. There's no attack system. So we're just going to jump to label 3 because we want to run through the running animation. So you can disregard those first two checks. And let's just go to the actual running animation. Okay, so in this case, we have a sword or we don't have a sword. So if your guy has the sword, we have one character set to handle him having a sword on his back. And if he doesn't have a sword, it'll just be him without a sword on his back. So how I handled this was, we know we have 6 frames of animation. This is all, so I achieved the whole running 6 frames of running animation using one character set. He takes up, so you have 8 slots, so 8 spots for a character. Every direction with right step and left step of a character, you could fit 8 different ones with all those 160 or 360 degree angles. So whether he's facing right, up, left, or down, you have the 3 frames of animation per walk cycle. So that's the room we have on our character sets. Well, I only have 6 frames of animation, so each one of those frames is going to have a possibility of him either facing up, down, left, or right. So all we had to do to set the character setup to be handled, and new hero run frames sword. Okay, sorry. So this is him with the sword anyways, his running animation, this is his character set. So it actually takes up, at least it's less than, you have 2 open slots for 2 different characters. So a 6 frame animation would take up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to handle every direction that he'd be facing. And every frame. So basically what you would do is this whole first character set right here for the up, they'd just all be identical. It'd all be that running 1, 2, 3. That way, whatever step he's on, whether it's the right, the middle, or the left step, within the frame animation in the engine, it's always going to show this one frame, which is the frame we want it to see. And then that would be the same thing. The next one would be this set. So for facing down, all those are the same. For facing left, all those are the same. Up and right. And then the next character set, the next block right there, is also, obviously you can look and see every one of those is identical. So each character set is one frame of him facing up, right, down, and left. So that's how I set it up. It seemed pretty space efficient anyways. So in the engine, when we get to that jump to label 3 we were talking about. So the very first pose, all we want to do is set him to be on that very first character set, which would be the first frame. And that would be it. Now, after you've set it to that, I do a 0.1 second wait. Just so we know we're seeing that frame for that amount of time. It seems, looking at the, play around with it. Maybe you like 0.2 or something. But for me, the 0.1 seems like the correct time to see that frame in his run cycle. You could make the cycle go slower. You just increase that wait time. So that frame is going to be shown for 1/10 of a second. And then after every frame shown, we want to go through basically the same checks that we went through at the beginning of that jump to label. So every 1/10 of a second, it's going to be a different frame, and we know every 1/10 of a second it's checking to see if we're going to use swinging the sword as the example. After that 1/10 of a second, it's going to check again if he's swinging his sword, and if he is, it's going to jump to label 5. So as you can see, after the 0.1 second wait, we have a conditional branch. If sword swing pose is on, we're jumping out of this running animation back to label 5, which is the sword swing pose, which makes our hero a blank slate so that you don't see him standing there while his sword's swinging. So that would be the first frame. And so that's a check I do, the sword swing check. And then it looks also for if you're not pressing the keys. So then if you're not pressing, it's not just his run animation that continues, or him stuck in like a, frame 3 of the run animation, but your player's just standing there. So that wouldn't look right. And if that happens, we jump to label 4, which I'm not going to go to it, but label 4 would be his animation of him standing at rest. I think I have him breathing, or if he's got his sword out, he's kind of doing a defensive stance. And then after that, after your checks, after that 0.1 second wait, after the first frame, the second frame is going to be identical other than the frame animation. So this one is set to the second, obviously, on that character sheet that we'd set up. This one's set to the second frame. Again, I only have 2 of them because in my game you can either have a sword or not, and I wanted the sword to be visible on him if you had it in your inventory. So that's the only reason I have 2. If you were doing this on your game and it was just a regular RPG where you don't see any of their equipment on them, you wouldn't need 2. You just need 1 or whatever you want to, however many options you want. Obviously, handle that with a conditional branch. And then again, after that frame, we're going to do the exact same checks. And then we're going to do the third frame. And in between every one of them, we have that 0.2 wait. So we know that each frame is being shown the same amount of time, or for the same amount of time. And then something I added the other day, I think, after I did it, watching him, got to have footstep sounds. So I went ahead and it's not like I've seen some where, actually, I might have just been playing Shadow Seeker, I think it's called. I think Koopa Kush did that one. I think that was it. As you walk around, depending on the terrain that you're on, the footstep sound effects changes, and so it sounds like if you're walking in grass, it sounds like a real muffled, squishy walk. And then if you're walking on a tile, like in a kitchen, it sounds like it's clicking. And that'd be pretty cool, which would be pretty easy to set up. I would just need one more check before the sound effect to get my character's X and Y coordinates, see what kind of tile he's standing on, whether it's, what kind of terrain I've assigned to that tile in the chipset database. And then that would, with a conditional branch, you could say, if your terrain is going to be rocks or tile or anything like that, you would give it a value of 1. And then if that terrain type's value is 1, make the sound effect, the footstep sound effect, whatever you would want. But I just went with 1 footstep for now anyways. I don't know. It sounds good to me, and I think it's a good neutral footstep to where it'll work for anything other than snow. Maybe it might be a little odd with snow. You could just do a couple different footstep sounds and just assign, snow or dirt or anything is going to sound like one thing, and then anything that you're walking on that's supposed to be a hard surface could sound something like I think mine is. I actually made it on BFXR, I think. I was chatting with someone about that the other day on Discord. I don't know if you can hear that, but pretty generic footstep sound. But anyways, so within that, in my event that's label 3 is like, that's where it jumps for any time you're just running on a normal map with no cinema scene. That's what it's going to go to. So we just go through that routine 6 times to handle all 6 of those frames. And in between every frame, you just do your checks. It's that simple. And there's no, there's no lag. It works great. Just do a quick test play, and that's how I achieved the the 6 frame running animation, and it's not just a 3 frame running or 3 frame walking or 3 frame. And then once you do it too, man, like, you really notice the 3 frame animations because it just looks so much better having, a lot more frames to represent your hero running or walking. And I had to say, it wasn't hard. I didn't implement that when I added the running character set frames. I had done it with his walk before, the walk that I didn't really like, I wasn't satisfied with. And actually, I couldn't even find it now, but his initial one was just the 3 frame walking animation, I think. And then I didn't like that, so I ended up doing the 6 frame walking animation. Now, that was before I really jumped into, I don't know, every time I tried to alter the hero as far as how he looked walking with multiple frames, it turned out pretty bad. So if you look, if you saw the walking animation, well, I can show it to you actually. I have it on his old pose handler, I think. Let's see if I can find it. Excuse me. I got the hiccups. Hero, where's his pose animation? His old pose animation. Let me see. It's somewhere in this ridiculous common event database. Hero pose handle. Look at this. All right, so all I have to do is turn this one back on because I didn't delete it, and then turn this one to call. We'll apply, and then let's check it out. So this, I could have showed it on an earlier video when I was talking about it. I just didn't really think about it at the time, that I still had the common event to show his old walking animation. But let's have a look at that. Oh yeah, so this will be good just to show you the difference. So that's the 6 frame walking. I mean, it's not bad. It's just, there's no pixel movement vertically, so he's not moving up and down. When he's at rest, he's moving up and down more than when he's walking. When he's walking, it looks like, oh, it's just bad, dude. It looks like he's doing a roll step, like he's in a marching band or something. And it just, I think at the time I liked it better than, the 3 frame walk that I had before, but I just don't care for this at all. And again, it's like, it seems like he's taking such small steps, but he's moving a whole pixel, or a whole tile. So that's just that's still the 6 frame. And what I did actually was just, I think I actually took, for his legs, probably why it turned out so bad. I think I took Randy from Secret of Mana. I think I found his walking animation, all of the frames for it, and I just took his legs from it and, altered them a bit to fit with my guy, just changed the color of them. And you can see actually his leg thickness changes too when he starts walking. So yeah, I went the lazy way about it, and I let that work for a while. But, take your time to set your custom, or make your own custom sprites or have them made. And it's so worth it. I'll turn that off. And then go back to that. So big difference, both the 6 frame, both the 6 frame. One is the walking and one's the running. And it's just a world of difference if you just don't go the easy route. Just commit to it. And, in the grand scheme of things, if you're willing to commit, most of us here on RMN, if you're willing to commit 10 years and iteration after iteration of your passion project, well, why not just go ahead and take that extra couple hours? And if it takes you a couple hours, maybe it'd take you just an hour, I don't know, to draw the frames that you need to make it look good. That's my take. But not to get back on the whole walking running animation too much, I just thought it might be helpful. I know when I started doing Onix Rift, man, the amount of information I was able to drudge up from RMN, just because people in the past had taken time to do tutorials and then upload them to the site. Like, dude, I got so much information from, all the OGs that I kind of just wanted to give back a little, I guess. I don't know. It sounds cheesy, but I wanted to contribute to the community a little bit. And it's something that's like, okay, well, even if you're not doing an action combat game, or that's something you could put in any game, and it's not out of place because it just looks better, potentially looks better. So I wanted to show that. In fact, I could just run through it right now. So let's start as if I'm doing it from scratch. So let's start with our label 1. We'll throw our weight in. Our 0-second wait. That's what we talked about out of good habit. And again, on my other one, it was label 5 because I had started just making the event, with the key presses. I made that little section of like, okay, when he's standing still, we'll do that. And then afterwards, I went back and added the labels after I would that's how I kind of do event stuff, is like, kind of contemplate how I'm going to make it work. And then when I go in to make it, I'll do one step of the event at a time. Because all my, most of my events are just pretty long to make everything work. You kind of have to compartmentalize everything. And so it's, for me, it's easiest to, let's name this real quick so I don't lose it. Test run frames, something like that. So yeah, it's just easier for me to compartmentalize as I'm going into it. And so like if I want to make the character walk again, I'll just use that example since that's what we're on. I would start with like, okay, what's going to happen when he's standing still? Well, I just want him to cycle through 2 frames of breathing. Okay, well, let's start with that. We know we just need 2 different character sets for that. And we'll go between those 2. And then I might even start with, show, where is it at? Change sprite association, pick your sprite and set it, and then put your wait 1 second, or your 1/10 of a second wait, and then do the next animation, and then literally just test play it and see what it looks like. And then once I finish that, go back and put a label on it. And in that case, I probably did, 3 or 4 different aspects of the event before I went back and did labels. So label 5 just ended up on the top. Not to go on a tangent about labels again, but sorry, my camera just said something to me. I don't know what it said. It's probably about to stop recording, of course. It only lasts for like 3 or 4 gigs. Okay, but anyway, so we got label and then our wait 0, 0, and let's do it the fast way. We'll just go hero pose handle. Okay, so the only thing we're going to do here is we're going to check our key presses. So I'm just going to copy that, put it right here. Okay, and that would be to check your key press. I have vertical keys and horizontal keys. Those are 2 variables, 34 and 35. Variable 34 is if the number of variable 34 is greater than 0. And then also check custom, like your execute custom handler if not met. So a vertical keys variable you would want, and then horizontal keys variable. I'm assuming you guys know how to do the key press checks. I'm able to use these 2 without setting a variable up here because of my diagonal movement. That's another parallel process. And because it's a key press check, it was before I started making the labels and the 0 second waits like mandatory for myself, but because it's a key check press, it only cycles through this once and it goes back to that key press. And oh no, it's not waiting until key press. Well, I probably could add that wait in there, but it's functioning all right now, and I've got 0.1 second waits in here anyways. But anyways, this diagonal movement is my key input vertical and horizontal keys. So the diagonal movement has these key input variables, or these variables set to look for the key inputs, 34 and 35, which is why I don't have to put those in anywhere in this one. But if you did, you would want to make sure, obviously, whatever variables you set, like the vertical keys or the horizontal keys, somewhere you'd have to set that key press check to know that that's what's updating those variables is the arrow keys. But so that's why I'm not putting them in here, and why it would work is because I have that handled elsewhere. So we got our vertical key press. I'll get rid of these labels because, okay, so if vertical keys are greater than 0, meaning they're pressed. If they're not pressed, they're going to equal 0. That's where I would say, okay, well, we'll start a label 2 right here. Label 2. And then if they're greater than 0, we'll say jump to label 2. Copy, paste that. And then else handler, we may as well make that, label 3. And switch that to 3. Just anticipating. And then obviously we got label 2, so we got to paste our weight in there, and after every label like we talked about before. Okay, so that's our key press check, whether we're going to check. So those are nested conditional branches, by the way. I check my vertical keys first, jump to label 2, and the else handler is if vertical keys, if they're not greater than 0, meaning he's not pressing the vertical keys, we have to handle the horizontal key press in that first conditional branch's else handler. because just because the vertical keys aren't pressed doesn't mean that the horizontal keys aren't pressed. So if the vertical keys aren't pressed, it's going to check to see if the horizontal keys are pressed. If they're not pressed, then it's going to jump to that label 3, which would end up being, 0 on your horizontal and 0 on your vertical would be your guy's not walking at all. So that would be your, we'll put a label 3, copy, paste. Okay, so we know because if that's 0 and that's 0 and the else handler is going to be jumped to label 3, we know our label 3 is going to be him standing there doing nothing. So we would set our change sprite association to, I'm probably just going to go in and copy him from the other one because I don't want to scroll through all the stupid character sets that I got going on here. So your oppose handler, scroll down. We don't want the walking stuff. We want him standing there. That'll be good. Copy. Actually, let's see one where he's not holding anything. Yeah, that'll work. Copy. Okay, so we know our label 3 is going to set to him standing there because that's both vertical keys and horizontal keys equal to 0. Label 2, which is going to be if any keys are pressed, any directional keys are pressed, that's going to be our running through the animations or the frames we talked about. So here, oppose handler. I'm kind of just doing this to show you that I've got a lot going on, but it's really easy to do and actually pretty simple, and you really don't need to worry about all these conditional branches. Where's it at? There it is, label 3. So we don't need to do that. We just need to do this. Let's do, yeah, that one. Copy. That's going to be jumped to label 2. Paste that in there. And then all we're going to do is copy after that first frame of animation. Oh, we got to put our weight because that's going to set how long that frame shows. Our check source vertical. Oh, okay. Yeah. So is 0. So that'll be a little different. The check in the label 2 after that first frame plays. We don't need the 2. We don't need that. We wouldn't want that to be set up the same. We would basically want to check to see if the vertical keys are 0 and the horizontal keys are 0. So there's not going to be that else in either of them. It'll just be horizontal nested into the vertical. And if they are 0, we're going to say jump to, we only have up to label 3. Jump to label 3. Okay, so now we have one complete frame set up under the label 2. So literally all we have to do is we'll start from our change sprite, copy down to the vertical key checks we just did, paste underneath it, and we just got to change our sprite to the second frame. And then underneath that, we'll paste it again, and we'll check that, change that to our third frame. Underneath that, we'll check it again, make sure I'm on the right one. 1, 2, 3. This will be the fourth frame. 4. So basically, once you get that first initial set up, this will be our 5th frame. 5. Once you have that set up, paste, and this will be our 6th frame. Once you have one frame set up, it's really, really easy to set up. Okay, and since this is our last frame of animation, we will say if our vertical keys are 0 and our horizontal keys are 0, it's going to jump to label 3, but we'll go ahead and throw an else in here and an else in this one, or execute if it's not met, and we'll have this jump back to label 2. So that way, as long as we're pressing keys, it'll cycle back through. Jump to label. 2. Copy, paste, 0. That 0 is going to jump to 3, and then if it's not, it's going to jump back to label 2. Okay, and then just to make sure for good measure, we have that weight in there, and then label 2. Okay, so we just did that in a few minutes anyways, and let's see how bad that is. Let's see how many... I'm going to set this to... so basically, I'm just going to set this up to the hero's pose handler. So that's going to be switch form. So I'm going to make this my pose on. So it's not going to function with the sword swing, but it should function at, if I just do the key presses. So we'll just run that as our we'll make that our hero's animation. So let's see if it works. Look at that. So that's the event we just set up, and works great, at least. Again, like I said, you can see here my guy is not breathing because we just put the one character set in the idle stance. But yeah, it took us like 10 minutes probably, and it's the easiest thing in the world to do. I didn't mean to touch him. We don't need to listen to what he has to say. But since we're here, let's show you what I was talking about earlier. The reason I have the check for the sword swing. When I swing a sword, if you can see there, you can see his character set underneath that animation. And we don't want that. You see him behind himself there? So that's why I would add that sword check in there, because I have to make sure his sprite will disappear when he swings his sword. So yeah, that's that. It's kind of back to the whole character set thing, but I thought it was, again, I wanted to contribute something that maybe somebody else could use. And it's really easy to do. I'm probably a little messy going through it. I'm probably gonna have to chop this video up a little more because I kind of tripped over myself there a few times. But hopefully I got a good enough run of, I gave a good enough explanation that someone could just watch it and follow it, and maybe it'll help them out, dude. Maybe it'll help them out, just make their game pop a little bit better. But I'll go ahead and wrap that one up for now. It'll be a shorter one, hopefully, so maybe I'll get a few more people checking it out. All right, take care, guys.